And now we are ready to discuss women in leadership and board roles. Welcome and join me on stage. Karan Avelino, Executive Director, Business Development, Shipping at Philippine Transmarine Carriers. Karan Kochhar, Director, Head of Maritime People, Asia at Maersk. Chris Hall, Managing Director at Shipowners of Claims Bureau, MACS. Shehara de Silva, Managing Director at McLarens Group of Companies. And Arne Flølo, Consul General at the Norwegian Consulate in Mumbai. And we will have, in order to create a really good dynamic discussion, 2 minutes intros by each in 2 rounds. And let's get started. So, welcome. I think that they're both a representation now of amazing, strong partners supporting the Maritime SheEO Conference, and not to mention the level of our male industry colleagues and partners taking part of this truly is an actual example that things are changing. But now I wanted to dig into the brains of this amazing panel that we have with us today. And first, I wanted to hear from each of you. Why is it important to have women in the leadership and board roles? Which difference does it make? And everyone will have 2 minutes each, and just as equality time's up, then we have an eminent colleague in the front of us here who will let us know when the 2 minutes are up for each. So let's be very concrete and specific. And I think we will start with the Consulate.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part at the Maritime SheEO and in this panel. We have been, I will use the opportunity to say that we are very proud supporter of Maritime SheEO, and we've been there since its inception. So we are very happy to be here and to be supporting this initiative. In terms of women in leadership and boards, what kind of difference it makes, I think it is important to repeat what has already been said, and we can't repeat it often enough, is that women are equally capable as men. And if you're only tapping into half of the population, you will be tapping into only half of the talent pool. And I think that no company really will meet its full potential without tapping into the full talent pool there is available. Secondly, I would like to say that, well, we all do know sort of the quantitative importance of women in the workforce in general. You know, the contribution women in the workforce has on the GDP. But there are also some important qualitative aspects, and we know of them, and they are also documented in studies, that the diversity in the workplace is important, and it increases also the productivity. So that's important. There's also another qualitative aspect I would like to highlight, and that is that women actually bring often other perspectives into companies than men. And it's been documented that women tend to make consistently fairer decisions when competing interests are at stake. So therefore, to have diversity also represented at the leadership and in the boards of companies will then naturally lead to better decisions made for the company. The next point I would like to make is that these positions in boards and in leadership, they hold a lot of power. And there's something about, on a societal level, that power is distributed sort of representatively based on the demographics. So again, it's important to give power to women. The last thing, sorry, is that we know about the value for companies, the value for the economy and for the society, but this is also valuable for the women themselves, and they inspire others. So it's really very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shehara, what would you like to add from your end?
Thank you, Birgit, and thank you, Sanjam, for having me here. I'm happy to represent Sri Lanka and meet all of you. Just adding from what was said before, I'd like to cite the clear business case for having women on boards, which is there are more than 140 studies have been done on the financial benefit of having a woman on your board. including McKinsey & Company, the Catalyst Report, and so many others, which have cited 11% higher return on investment, higher price-to-book valuations, and superior stock performance. There have been statistically significant studies that show that having at least one woman on your board will yield better business performance. So that aside, coming to the more unquantifiable benefits, there's also better decision making because of the different perspectives that the women bring, but also a change in the culture of the board, the way the communication happens, as versus an all-male dominated setting. When you have a woman, the way the interaction happens, the way disagreement happens is almost respectful and sometimes brings about a different outcome than would an all-male board. And also there are two other points which have also been cited, which is better governance, because women speak more in terms of their principles and their values. So better governance and also more involvement in CSR. I don't know if there is a danger in generalizing, because you can say when it's, in the end of the day, it's an individual and their uniqueness, their capabilities, and that would contribute. But this is more an overall general perspective of what women bring to the board. And as you know, there are some countries which have like laws or quotas that have like 40% women should be on board, at least one woman on board. So this is not what we are talking about. We're not talking about filling a number or a statistic. There are banks that will give you loans only if you have a woman on your board. So this is not what we're talking about. The benefit for having a woman on board is if you're actually contributing. Your views are heard and you're part of the decision-making process. So I think it's very dangerous in generalizing just to have a woman to fill that statistic. But it's an active, participating woman can make a difference. And that's my point.
Thank you, Shehara. And then I would like to hear Chris' perspectives.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm grateful to be an ally to the women in the room and around. We've talked about the two kind of cases. There's the business case, there's a fairness case. One question I have is, why should women be leaders? Well, why not? You know, 50% of the world, it's just, why not? It's kind of odd that we're even talking about it in a way, but of course it isn't, because there's history and cultural reasons why we are where we are. But just riffing on the business side a little bit, there's a professor, Catherine Phillips from Columbia Business School. She's made a lot of waves and some interesting research, and one of her pieces is called How Diversity Makes Us Smarter, subtitled, Being Around People Who Are Different Makes Us Creative, more diligent, and harder working. And this kind of makes intuitive sense, right? If you're in a room with a bunch of people who you know will agree with you, you kind of just agree and you move on very quickly. But the research shows that the outcomes of those kinds of homogeneous meetings is not as good as the diverse meetings. So that's partly why the business is better. It's not just the correlation, it's that diversity brings out a better version of ourselves. We show up differently, we're more open-minded to other people, and we work harder to represent our own views and to understand others. So this is quite, I think, quite an interesting element of it. The other thing that's worth noting, I just, in the last minute or so, is that a recent study by Harvard Business Review this summer by two professors from Yale and London Business School showed that 5% of people, diverse participants in this study, liked the fairness argument. The fairness just being it's equitable, it's the right thing, it's moral. Sorry, that's 80% like that. 5% like the business case. It's not to say that the business case is wrong. The business case is right. The data is unchallengeable, really. But the people who are being appealed to by these justifications for gender diversity were like, well, I don't want to be hired just because of money, right? Gender equality is not a financial goal. It shouldn't be a financial goal. It can be a side benefit. It can be the cherry on top of gender diversity. Gender diversity by itself is a goal and should be a company value by and of itself.
Thank you, Chris. And then I would like to hear your reflections, Karan.
Thank you, Sanjam, for inviting me here. And let me touch on some important items, the general traits of women and what makes us good leaders. By nature, women are very much into details. And in general, a woman does not solve a problem based on the surface. Decisions are based on the root cause and other details to come up with the best solutions. Women also take time to explain what went wrong and why such solution has been made for everyone to understand. And the maternal instinct is an important trait of a woman. As mothers, women are generally selfless. That when it comes to priorities, everyone comes first and she would be the last. In the corporate world, this is translated to setting up clearly the priorities, monitoring them until everything is in place. Studies have shown that women make excellent collaborators who respect and utilize the value of each contributor in an organization. And having women in the organization can result in more participation, and everyone, regardless of demographics, can feel that their contribution is significant. With their thoroughness, women are able to iron out the details in between the bigger picture, from finalizing terms of policy to preparing a navigation plan. These details can sometimes spell the difference between profit and loss or life and death. Women in the workplace benefits businesses, and studies have proven that companies that practices gender equality has a happier labor force, decreased job turnover, and lower levels of attrition. They also have an easier time recruiting, greater rates of retention, job satisfaction, and productivity. Any workplace that can recognize what women need, that's respect, recognition, empathy, and understanding, benefits all, including men. These needs have a tendency to be overshadowed by competitive masculinity, yet they are as essential as a good paycheck or benefits.
Thank you so much. And last on our panel, Karan, what would you add that hasn't already been said?
A lot has been said. Thank you, Birgit. Thank you to Maritime SheEO, the organizers, the sponsors, for having me here. I work for Maersk, and I'm truly fortunate to be with an organization that is really passionate about creating gender diversity at all levels of the organization, the workforce, the leadership, even the boards. Taking inspiration from you, I'll start with a personal story. I'm a seafarer myself, an ex-captain, and a few years ago, when my older daughter was 4 years old, on a school trip, she was taken to a cruise vessel. And as part of one of the activities on board, it was a costume, a dress-up activity, and all the girls were given princess costumes, and the boys were given captain's uniform. And my daughter, stubborn as 4-year-olds are, she refused to wear the princess costume and insisted she wears the captain's uniform. And while I was really proud of that, and if you don't talk about the cultural bias there, it did strike me that if she decides to join become a sailor tomorrow like her dad, then she doesn't have that many women captains to look up to. And of course, there are some here today, but it's far too less. And think about it. Women working in your organization, in our industry, who do they look up to for guidance as role models? To what level do they see themselves growing in this company? I think it's very simple. If you want your organization to be a diverse and inclusive one, that needs to reflect in the leadership. It impacts everything, and everything you want your organization to stand up for, your ethos, your values, your culture, your everyday DNA, it trickles down from the top. It impacts training, development, culture, engagement. My colleagues here have cited a lot of researches, studies. I think it is beyond doubt that having more diversity in all levels of the organization add more value to the way work is done, the way decisions are taken, and it's just a better business decision. So as the DG, Shri Amitabh Kumar, had said once, it's enough of discussion, it's time for action, it's time for us to take firm action to have more women in the leadership. And one last point, particularly in leadership, why it is essential is because I believe diversity breeds diversity. Having more women leaders will lead to having more women in your organization, and all the benefits you already explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, definitely calls for an applause. I think that was a super roundup of this first question. Diversity breeds diversity. Couldn't agree more. And now I wanted to, make it even more personal. I think this is a very personal topic. It's a personal topic to Sanjam and me, and to everybody gathered in this room, and those watching the stream from around the world in, like last year, 80 countries that we counted. So, digging a little bit further into this, I wanted to hear from this panel if they can share their experiences specifically where diversity and women in senior roles has made a real impact. And I will just start referring back to the first time, like 5 years ago, beginning of November here in Mumbai, Sanjam and I managed to get a meeting at, I think, the Yacht Club or something, Sanjam, which is kind of a more typical male sphere. And we had the previous consul from the Norwegian Consulate, Anne Ollestad, was in, and then the former DG Shipping, Malini Shankar. And I would think that actually the impact of those being women leaders in their role had a huge impact in their support towards what is now the Maritime SheEO Initiative and Conference, even from then, back then. So how has your journey been? Which kind of key cases do you have to reflect on that you want to share with our audience today?
Thank you. I hadn't prepared to be too personal in a sense, but I realize also that the point I was going to make actually is striking a personal chord. The first example I was going to make was actually the example of the first female prime minister in Norway in 1986, Gro Harlem Brundtland. And she broke many barriers and glass ceilings in Norway. And it was not only her as a prime minister. Many countries have had female prime minister, but she had 40% female ministers in her government. And this is nearly 40 years ago. And she was actually one of the key politicians at that time that awakened me politically, I should say. It was the debate between her and her main counterpart, from the conservative side, who was sort of that was a male, and he used all the techniques you can imagine in the world to sort of get her stressed during the debates. But she did a phenomenal job. She later, sort of after being prime minister for many years, she was the WHO chairman, and she was also commissioning head of the, I should say, the Brundtland report. And I'll go a little bit over time here, but the Brundtland report about sustainable development in '87, 1 year after she became prime minister, and that's such an important topic today. I'd like to say we have women in many, have had women in many different and important positions in Norway, and we are breaking barriers as we go. We had the first female general, 10, 12 years ago. She was also appointed as the first UN force commander in Cyprus. That was the world's first female force commander. So we have been breaking these glass ceilings and going also into very traditionally male-dominated spheres like the military. But we see that we haven't really come far enough. 2003, we sort of passed a Gender Reservation Act requiring 40% women in listed companies, in the boards of listed companies, because we realized we had to do more. We can't just encourage, because we have always been encouraging, but it wasn't enough. So we needed some clear measures. So we've done that since 2003. So now we have 43% women in boards of Norwegian listed companies. That is really very important. And as you realized, we are still not done. We have a long way to go in the maritime sector. 11% at sea, which was highlighted by our DG from Norway. So, you know, there's still barriers to break. There are still ceilings to break. We've reached far, but we cannot say that we have reached far enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Arne. And Shehara, what would you like to add from your personal background, really showcasing the value of women representation?
Well, I come from a country which produced the world's first female prime minister. But having said that, I think Sri Lanka still lags behind in terms of female representation at high senior management positions. In Sri Lanka, we have 60% of female graduates coming out of the universities. So you would find more of the qualified talent pool being women. Yet, however, my personal experience is in two main areas. One is when we formed Vista in Sri Lanka 8 years ago, with the help of Sanjam, who inspired me to take this on, it completely changed the landscape for women in maritime in Sri Lanka, because it was a completely male-dominated industry where you would attend ministry meetings, decision-making, policy-level discussions which had no women representation. But today, I think there wouldn't be a single panel that doesn't have a woman representation in maritime sector. There would be, Vista is a recognized voice in the industry, and I think women are changing the landscape in maritime. So that's one main experience I've seen over the years, how it has impacted in maritime. But in my personal experience, I also head the Shipping Agents Association, which is called CASA in Sri Lanka, which is a 50-year-old male-dominated, all gentleman's, domain in maritime. So it's the first time that a female is heading, and the difference I see is I've also invited, there's 3 other female EXCO members. We have 20 EXCO members from all the shipping companies in this industry. And for the first time, we have 3 EXCO members who are female as well, which was previously when I was an EXCO, it was just 1. And the difference is that I see that decision making is much more inclusive in terms of more viewpoints are heard, and engagement. Previously, I felt that decisions were made more on a hierarchical basis, whereas now there is engagement and teamwork among all these. There's subcommittees, so there's about 50 people really who contribute to all the work, and there's all the subcommittees are engaged. And I see a lot more energy and passion in the whole association, how things are happening. And I think, I hope to think that it's the women who bring that, but that's the difference that I would see versus a traditional hierarchical CEO who, or a chairperson who leads from the top. That's one. And in my second example is my own company, which is McLarens Group of Companies. Again, it's a 70-year-old family, 3rd-generation family business. When I joined the business 20 years ago, there was 2% females. Today, we have 18%, but still challenged for women in the senior positions. We have more women in support functions like HR, IT, and legal, but less in the shipping operations and on the field. But having said that, again, we've been placed as one of Asia's great places to work, and also one of the best places to work for women. And this helps to attract more women and more talent. So that's one of the clear benefits that I have seen, because it's very easy to be sort of that voice, and that women feel confident and comfortable. Even I interview them, they say, you know what, this is a place I want to work for. So you have a better reach in terms of your recruitment. And also financial performance, I have to vouch for. I think it has helped. And again, I feel it's the engagement. Engagement and decision making at the board level is more inclusive, because otherwise everybody's on the same viewpoint. Here, when you have at least 2 or 3 women on your board, they would bring in a different viewpoint. And sometimes it's not easy to get heard. Sometimes the women have to speak louder or have more data to support their viewpoints, and sometimes they get ignored completely. I'm not saying that it's changed everything, but I think it still challenges the status quo and the way that things were done traditionally, and I think there's a long way to go. But the journey has definitely started. Thank you.
It's a great real example of diversity breeding diversity. And Chris, your company has also done like magical things on diversity, but yeah?
Yes, that's true. We're all talking about various firsts, and I work for the American P&I Club based in New York City. And this summer, Dorothea Iono was appointed the first female CEO of the American Club, and that is the first CEO of an international group P&I club in a 167-year history of P&I clubs. So we're all very proud of her. We're all very inspired. I think you all should be very inspired. I think it's not just women that can be inspired by this. I'm talking about the impact of just pure inspiration, right? We all want to be inspired in our lives, right? It's not just a job. And so when women can see somebody attaining the top position, that's very inspiring. But it's also anybody who's ever had a challenge in their life, right? We've all had that. And so to see somebody kind of break the mold, break the glass ceiling is inspiring to all of us, all diverse candidates and literally everybody in my view. There's a saying, if you can see it, you can be it, right? So she has broken the glass ceiling, opened the door to other people who now see that. And I'll even expand it, it doesn't rhyme, but if you can dream it, you can be it. So keep dreaming and keep watching and keep working. I have my own daughter, it's not the same. She's 18 now. But I asked her yesterday, I said, why should women be in leadership positions? And she just said, I just think women are super powerful. Full stop. And yeah, I quite like that. And back to Dorothea, I mean, she has brought, I think, a higher level of awareness about our mental well-being, employee well-being, empathy. I think these things existed before. I don't want to say that it wasn't there, but I think she's raised the game. It's difficult or it's tricky. We don't want to fall into stereotypes about men and women and other people, but there are studies that show that there are correlation between these qualities and women leadership, and it makes sense to me. Having said that, she's not just a wallflower that's sitting around. She won the axe throwing competition that we had this summer in New Jersey. So, and it wasn't that we weren't trying. We were really trying, but she won it. So, you know, there's no stereotyping here. We all bring different things, and some of them can be more masculine qualities or more feminine qualities, but we're all people, and we all have all of these things within us. One last bit about the wellness, mental wellness and employee well-being, which is correlated to women leadership. These also make working in a company much better, right? And I read in preparation for this that these things are often overlooked by other managers in companies, or it's not always a typical business metric, but it really should be, right? Because if you have a well-functioning, happy, productive bunch of people working together, they're definitely going to do better. They're going to be more successful in every way that you can think of. So that goes into the business case, but also the fairness case, and to the human case for gender equality and leadership by women. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, Karan, in your organization and in the Philippines in general, there has also been a lot of change over these past years that I've seen.
That's correct. Actually, our company provides the officers and crew for various international shipping companies, okay? And our role is to make sure that we're able to entice or inspire not only men, but also women to join the maritime industry. And it has been challenging. And thanks to people like, I'm not sure if you know Kate McHugh, the very first captain of female captain of Celebrity Cruise Lines. We also have people in the cargo industry. That's Courtney Hansen, who's the very first permanent women captain of Sea Swift. It's a cargo company. These people, because we have now the social media, and some of our women applicants become inspired to become like them, okay? And for them, it is no longer impossible to be a captain. As long as they have proper education, they train well, and they aspire to really be good captains in the future, they will get it. And we don't have to go far, okay? Who inspires us actually here is Sanjam Gupta, okay? Her Maritime SheEO, when she formed this, it was a very good move to really spread awareness that women can step up, okay, and be part of the maritime industry. You know, any positions will make you successful. You have to start somewhere. And there's also an organization, it's WISTA, okay. All the members, I would consider that members of WISTA have successful careers and have come up with significant contributions to the maritime industry. I can come up with a long list, but it says there, time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karan. And yeah, I mean, this is kind of the starting a wave, and it starts with these small drops of water coming together and becoming more and more forceful. But not removing what was there, but actually blending in and integrating so that we get the best of men and women for the industries. So, Karan, what kind of key stories would you like to bring out to our audience today?
So, in my experience, I've seen that gender diversity in leadership teams has completely transformed our approach. And I can give, example of my own team, and I'm really proud to say that my management team has equal representation of both genders. And this has transformed in the way we work, the way we address problems, the way we make decisions. And to give you an example, I'm in the marine HR side of things, so we look after HR for our seafarers. And one of the problems that we have had historically there is there are no women seafarers. We are represented globally by less than 2%. And we've been trying to address this for decades, and we still haven't done anything. But in the last 2 years, my team has worked on this, and now we are, on the forefront of changing things, on moving the needle. We have, not taken a unilateral approach of just recruiting more women, because that is not going to solve the problem. You recruit more women, you need to have an environment, you need to have an ecosystem that is conducive for them to thrive in this industry. So we are looking at the onboard culture, as Captain Bebu mentioned earlier. The physical infrastructure on board the ship needs to be suitable for women, but it's also the culture on board. And for that reason, we have initiated leadership programs, we have initiated cultural awareness, gender sensitization, anti-harassment programs across the board to address the culture on board. Also, we need to look at the attraction part of it, to have more women coming in. And there's a lot of work that we are doing every day to dispel myths, to break taboos, to reach out on the grassroots level to attract more women. And also, we have launched a women cadet program with our partners at AMET, where we want to create a physically and psychologically safe environment for women. And we have set out with a target of achieving 50% of our cadet intake to be women in the next 5 years. And I'll just end by saying it. I agree with your daughter, women are superstars, but it's not about women and men. I think it is the women and men working together that brings out the magic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I mean, the power in a super player like Maersk really stepping up to the diversity game here, of course, has significant value. Because I think it's about now also, I mean, one thing is that younger girls, students, cadets, they need inspiration to make those decisions, to grow their careers, to invest in going this life journey with us as an industry. But it's also about then inspiring the other companies and the existing leaders out there not necessarily having to kind of reinvent the wheel internally, but looking at the companies that are doing things, sharing our stories about what are the small and big initiatives that are being grown, introduced, tested out, and experimented with. And then either take that inspiration into your management team and board to replicate it, or to team up and build and shape the good alliances of companies working on stronger initiatives jointly, shoulder by shoulder and integrated, men and women. So I really hope that both the employers out here that are watching from inside this room or on the screen, and that everybody in this room, regardless of where you are today in your career, that you really get some good inspiration from this, and also really see that value that when we get there, when we enter the boards, when we enter the management positions, let's not close the door after us, but let us unite and collaborate and make sure that we continue paying it forward